Okay, Boker Tov, everybody. Today's learning, as always, Le'ilu Nishmat Avigdar Chai Abraham Ben Meir Tzvi Berachalea. The Shama should have an aliyah. We are in the middle of Perek Yud. We're nearing the end of Perek Yud, actually. And let me just mute everybody. Feel free to take yourselves off of mute when you need. We're going to finish up the Perek with something that seems a little strange. But let's get to it. We're in the little book. We're on page 50, and where we're located is a paragraph that begins with the words "V'hinei vadai ki melacha." Okay, so it's again "V'hinei vadai ki melacha." So we're talking about nikiyut, which is not only being careful not to do mitzvot lo taseh, and to be careful to do mitzvot taseh and all that, but it's even this concept of being very careful to the point where every branch, every possible permutation of an aveira, you are clean from. Now, the obvious statement he's about to make, which we've already kind of mentioned, is as follows: V'hinei vadai ki melacha rabahi la'adam la'agia shlemut hamidah hazot. It's obviously a tremendous amount of work to get to this point, to reach shlemut or perfection in this particular midah, a character trait. Ki ha'averot hanikarot viduot, because those mitzvot or these averot that are well known, kalot milishamer mehem. I mean, it's pretty easy to say, okay, I'm not going to eat treif, I'm not going to eat basar v'chalav, I'm not going to work on Shabbat. Those are pretty easy to do. I mean, easy, but you know what I mean. Kevan sheratam gluya. Everyone knows those things. The precision that one needs for this level of what's called nikiyut, it's quite difficult. Rationalization or thinking up our excuses of why we're not doing something or why we can do something kind of covers up the chet. This is like similar to what the Chachamim said in the Gemara in Avodah Zarah. Averot she'adam dash ba'akevav sovavot oto bishat hadim. Those mitzvot, little means which a person steps on with his heel, encircle him at the time of the din. Okay, what does that mean? We know that after 120 years, we have the I don't see the opportunity, whatever the word is, to stand before the Kisei HaKavod, before the Melech Malchei HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to be judged. We have an inkling into that, an insight into that, of course, on Yom Kippur, on the day, what's called Yom Hadin, Judgment Day. But we will stand before God, where every single solitary thing we've ever done, said, thought, and felt will be open to Hashem, it is, and then we'll see it. And those things that we did, the mitzvot we did, will be there as our defenders. Those things that we did wrong will be there as our prosecutors. And then he tells us that those things that we just kind of like, who cares? Like, big deal this, or who cares about that? Or we just kind of, as it were, stepped on them and didn't pay any attention to those particular problems or mitzvot or averot. Those are the ones that will encircle the person. What does that mean to encircle? So picture you're in a courtroom. So you have the people who are there to defend you standing over here. They're all standing nearby you. And the people that are accusing you are standing over there on the other side. And then you have a whole group of people standing immediately around you. And they're all pointing their finger at you. That's what those mitzvot shadam dash ba'akevav are. That's what the Gemara in Avodah Zarah tells us. We know that's based on the first pasuk in Parshat Ekev, Vaya Ekev Tishmeun. It will be when you listen to my mitzvot. And Rashi over there says, again, for the word Akev, the heel, the person dash be'akevav, the person steps on them, walks on them, and doesn't really care too much about them. Some people's perspective might be like, well, that's the other people. I'm really careful. But when you do a bit of a cheshbon nefesh, when you really start thinking about what you do and what you stay away from, and then what you're like just wishy-washy on, you start to see that there are unfortunately plenty of things that we do that, maybe not plenty, but some things that we do that we could be a little bit more careful about, and we do kind of just fluff it off. Now, this next paragraph is going to sound No, sorry. Let me finish this paragraph first. And then the next paragraph is one that sounds a little strange. The Gemara Bava Batra tells us, Chachamim tell us, Rubam begazel, majority of people get tripped up somehow in theft, which we're going to deal with in the next chapter. We'll see, because it doesn't sound logical, does it? Umiutam barayot, and a small minority get tripped up in arayot, illicit affairs, sexual problems that people shouldn't be, things that shouldn't be doing. V'chulam ba'avak lashon hara. And everyone gets tripped up by avak lashon hara. What's avak lashon hara? What does it mean? The dust of lashon hara. We all know you can't talk lashon hara, right? I can't tell you. I'm sitting opposite right now. The one face I see right now is Eric. I can't come to the class afterwards and say, by the way, do you know what Eric did yesterday? Boy, that was pretty bad. Okay, we all know that you can't do something like that. What's avak lashon hara? So let's say, using Eric, sorry if I'm going to use you as my example right now, that someone says to me, so have you seen Eric Lafazan recently? How's he doing? I said, better you don't ask. Okay. So when I say something like that, I didn't say he's doing something wrong. He's doing something, no, but the implication is that there's something going on. Even that's not okay. And in addition to that, let's say I know I happen to like Eric a lot, but somebody I know maybe for some reason doesn't like him. So I say, by the way, I saw Eric yesterday. What a good guy. Why is that avak lashon hara? Because that would lead a person, the other guy, to say, oh, give me a break. Come on. Okay. So now I ask Mechila from Eric, from even using you as an example. So he says, the Gemara tells us that there are areas that where people are more likely to trip up, less likely to trip up, but in some areas that almost everyone will trip up. And again, he's going to get into some tremendous amount of depth in chapter 11. For me personally, chapter 11 is one of my favorite prakim in Mesilat Yesharim, the next chapter. We will see why. Because of the fact that the margin of error, so to speak, in all these areas is so thin, everyone one way or another trips up on them. Because they don't necessarily know that there's a potential problem. Let me give you an example of Gezel, because it kind of sounds strange to say most people have a problem with theft. He's going to say it does not mean the kind of theft of just walking over to someone, taking their item and walking away with it. Most people don't do that. But there are other ways that you can steal. Stealing, by definition, means taking something that's not yours. But there are other ways of doing it besides this. And we're going to see some examples. That's going to be one of the first topics he's going to deal with in the next chapter. Now, this next paragraph, let me get through it, and then I will pose what seems to be the obvious question. The rabbis, blessed memory, told us, David HaMelech was successful in getting to the point of being completely clean, so to speak, completely from all these problems. And therefore, when he went into battle, he was able to go in with a tremendously strong level of emunah, with sense of security, confidence. And he would ask, he would request, he says to Hashem, I want to chase after my enemies and take over them or overtake them, and I'm not going to return home until they are completely obliterated. Neither of these three kings ever said something like that to Hashem before a battle. But why did David have what looks like to be the gall to say it? Because they, meaning Yehoshaphat, Asa, and Chizkiyahu, were not to the point of being completely naki by our definition here, but David had achieved that. This is also David himself said in Tilim, Hashem kitzidki, kivor yadai yashiv li. He asked Hashem to be rewarded based on his tzidkut, his righteousness, and to be paid because of the cleanliness of his hands. Obviously, he's speaking metaphorically. And furthermore, David said, Vayashev Hashem li chitzidki kevor yadai leneged einav, a similar pasuk as we just said before. This refers to this cleanliness of that we've already referred to before. And then he repeated and said, says that Hashem has paid me in kindness, righteousness. He says, I'm going to run after you. I'm going to trust in you. I will be not with no fear. All these statements that David HaMelech makes are statements of complete reliance on Hashem because he has done the right thing. And furthermore, he himself said, we all know that pasuk. That one, he says, who can go up to the mountain, meaning to the Mount Har HaMoriah, to go on to where the Makom HaMikdash, is only one who's had clean hands and pure of heart. Okay. Let me read the final statement, and then we're going to come back to this paragraph I just read. Ve'omnam, and this paragraph I read to you early on, we jumped ahead to this, but I'm coming back to it again. Last paragraph of the paragraph. Ve'omnam vadai shamida azot kasha. We know, it's obvious that this midah, this character trait, is extremely difficult to do. Ki teva adam chalash, because a person in general is weak, their nature is weak. And a person gives into temptation very easily. And a person could also, I said, you can rationalize, you can kind of work your way in your brain to say, oh, come on, I'm sure it's fine because there's got to be a dat yachid that's mentioned somewhere in the Gemara that I'm going to rely on. But for sure, a person who achieves and reaches this character trait properly has really, really reached a very high level. Because he stood before a tremendous, a great war, and he won. And he's going to then get into the next chapter and get into the discussion of what these midot are. Okay, or the details of it. Okay, so a number of things. First of all, I want to make it very clear. This is not, last night in the Kuzari class, in the Tanya class, I made reference to IKEA, that, you buy something, you open it up, you look at all the parts, you figure out what they are, then you put it together. This is, and that's how the Havdil Tanya works. You unpack it, you understand what all the parts are, you put it together, and you move forward. This is not how Mesilat Yesharim works. The fact that a person does not get to the complete level of nikiyut, or the complete level of zehirut or zrizut, does not prevent them from trying on the other level as well. Because it's not a matter of levels, it's a matter of trying to do the right thing with the ultimate goal, serving Hashem properly. So therefore, if a person works on zrizut, and works on zehirut, and works on nikiyut, that can be done concurrently. But now we have to understand something that I think is an obvious question. David HaMelech makes some statements that none of us would make, I don't think, not because we're not at the level of David HaMelech, but because it doesn't seem right. You kind of open your mouth where you shouldn't be opening your mouth. We know that Yaakov Avinu says, Katonti mikol hachasadim mikol ha'emet asher asita et avdecha. It was my brother's bar mitzvah parsha. I taught him, so I remember it. That Yaakov says katonti. What does that mean, katonti? I have been made small. So it says in Rashi that he feels he was about to go into battle with Esav, and he may have used up his zechuyot. Look, he understood he understood who he was. It wasn't that he didn't know who he was. But it's also possible he used up his zechuyot, and now he's going to go into battle and die in battle with Esav. So in other words, you should never be too sure of yourself. And yet, David HaMelech basically says, yeah, here, God, I'm going out to war. I'm going to destroy my enemies, and you're going to make sure it and pay me back for all my sitkut and everything, my nikiyut. Like, how does he say something like that? So I'm going to go a step further before we answer that. Do a screen share and something. Let me see if this is the one I want first. Yeah. No, not this one yet. Hold on. I want the other one. Okay. Give me 1 second. Get up on the screen. Here it is. Okay. Go back to you. And screen share. The Gemara at the end of Masechet Ta'anit makes it what seems to be a very strange statement. It says as follows: Mishemet Rabbi, when Yehuda Hanasi died, Batla Anava. There was no more concept of truly someone who was a humble individual. And Yirat Chet, a person who truly could say he was a Yirei Chet, he was afraid to do any sin. Amarle Rav Yosef, so Rav Yosef said, Amarle Rav Yosef Letana, Lo titne anava, don't say that nobody has humility. Diika ana, there's me. I'm the biggest anav you ever met. By the way, I actually did have someone say that to me, for real. He says, if I could just be a little bit more of an anav, I'd be the biggest anav you ever met. I said, don't you realize what you're saying? That's true story, absolutely 100% true. Anyways, so Rav Yosef said, what do you mean when after Rabbi died, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi died, there was no more idea of anava, that there was nobody who could say he was completely humble? I am. Amar le Rav Nachman Latana. Rav Nachman said to Latana, Lo titnei yirat chet. Don't say that there's nobody who is completely not a yirei chet anymore. Diika ana, there's me. I am a tremendous yirei chet. Okay, so on the same level, the same kind of question I want to ask: how is it that David HaMelech says this statement of, pay me back for my good things that I've done well, the nikiyut and everything else. And you have these two other people saying that after Rabbi died, don't say there was no more anava, don't say there's no more yirat chet, there's me. It sounds like the antithesis of the idea. So there's a commentary called the Marit Ha'ayin on the Gemara. He says as follows: Lo titnei anava diika ana. This is the quote from the Gemara. Don't say there is no. I assume you see my screen now where it says that near Ed the Rav Yosef. Y'all see that? Just shake your head yes or no. Yes. Okay. Let me make it full size screen actually. Near the Rav Yosef Rav Nachman. Sorry. It seems that Rav Yosef Rav Nachman chas v'shalom debau lagid ma'alatam. There was they were not coming to boast and say, whoa, poof, look at who I am. The chashu, they were concerned that if the Talmidim would start to understand and see, there's no more yirat chet, there's no more anava, shema yiyu potech piv. It might have been an opening for them to say, so what do I have to strive to be an anav for? Why should I strive to be a yirei chet? It ended with Rabbi. What do we? And these character traits, these levels to strive for, would be gone. And because of this fear, they, meaning Rav Yosef and Rav Nachman, had to say what they said. They were saying it l'shem shamayim. L'shamayim. Nikuda. They were doing l'shem shamayim. They were saying, don't get dissuaded. Of course there is. Look at me. Not to say he was a big shot, not to say he was an anav, but he had to say it because he wanted to make sure people understood you could still be such a person. And he ends that comment. I love this line. He says that Hashem should give us the zechut that all of our actions should be l'shem shamayim. As a matter of fact, in benching in Adot Mizrach, we say, how is it? It says at the end of the paragraph, as this is a request from Hashem. So it is the same idea as going on over here with David HaMelech. The Rav Kook says, I have here, I'm not going to put it on the screen. Rav Kook says in Musar Avicha, he says under the topic of Ga'ava, this is Musar Avicha, it's not just a shul. In Musar Avicha, in the paragraph of the section under Ga'ava, or haughtiness, in letter Dalet, he says as follows: Kol zman she'ga'ava hi balev. As long as a person has haughtiness, gaiva, as they say, in his heart, it's impossible to do tshuva. And you can't have really a true, pure thought, an intellectual thought. What does that mean? Why am I mentioning that? I didn't just happen to find this. So Rav Aviner in his Sefer on Mesilat Yesharim quotes that to tell us that there's a point, there's a reason. It doesn't, Rav Kook didn't say, Kol mishtei shlo gava, blah, blah, blah. He said, Kol mishtei gava beliv. In other words, if you feel that way of gava, you feel I'm better than somebody else and I'm the best Anna that ever could be, that prevents you from growing. That prevents you from doing anything positive. But if you're saying it, you don't feel it, but you're saying it in order to motivate other people, that's a different story. We see this in a different light when Moshe Rabbeinu was having a conversation with Hashem after Hashem tells him, go down from the mountain because your people have done something wrong. We're going to be reading this fairly soon, about 3 more weeks. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, as he's going down, or he says at some point, he said, "En kol anot gevura, en kol anot chalusha, kol anot anochi shomea." Right? So he says, I just hear this. It's not, I'm not winning a war. I don't hear the sounds of battle, of losing. I just hear sounds of frivolity and gaiety, whatever the words are. So he comes down, and what happens? We could all, again, sorry, I picture Charlton Heston, holding on to the Aseret Dibrot, and he's furious and he's angry, and he throws the Aseret Dibrot down. As Gemara talks about, maybe because the letters flew off, and now that's so heavy because it's just plain stone, and he's furious. And then there's the Milah Shemelai and Bnei Levi come, and they kill the people, about 3,000 people who served the Egel HaZahav. And what does he do then? Then he goes back up to Hashem. What do you want from them? They're Am Kshei Oref. What happened? 5 minutes ago, he's angry and screaming, yelling at Bnei Israel. Now he goes back up the hill and he said, you know what, Hashem, a little Rahmanas on them. They don't know what they're doing. So which is it? So again, when a person needs to, in his heart, Moshe Rabbeinu, maybe he wasn't angry at all. I don't know. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. But the people needed to see him angry. The people, he needed to put at least some form of hamadat panim, to put on the show for them, to make them feel this way, that they understood that something was wrong. In a similar sense, both in Rav Kook and this Perush Marita Ayin are really telling us the same thing when it came to David HaMelech. David HaMelech is trying to let us know something. You think it's difficult to get to the point of Nikiyut? The answer is yes, it is difficult. But I did it. Matter of fact, those of you who learn Tanya will have learned in the past, if you do it yourself, or will learn Bezrat Hashem with me, that David HaMelech was able to cleanse himself to the point where he was able to eradicate his Yetzer Hara from his heart. He says that he has a halal in his lev, a hole, an empty space in his heart, which is representative of the missing piece of the Yetzer Hara. He was able to get to that point. How? Simple, easy peasy, as they say. In any case, so what David HaMelech is doing here is giving us actually a form of chizuk. That yes, or the Ramchal is giving us a form of chizuk by quoting these psukim, that yes, it is difficult. I admit that. But look, it can be done. Because look at David HaMelech. No, you and I are not David HaMelech, but you can shoot for it. Just like these Tanaim, or these Amoraim said, don't say there is no Anava because there's me. Don't say there's no Yirat Chet because there's me. They weren't doing it to boast. So too, we're not bringing David HaMelech here to boast, but rather to show it is possible, it can be done. Okay, now, chapter 11, as I mentioned to you, we're going to get into it, start now, is, if I'm not mistaken, I think the longest chapter, but it's also magnificent as far as I'm concerned. I'll tell you why. Because with all the things that we've learned so far, he's given us ideas and ways to approach certain situations. This parak will open your eyes to areas you never even thought about. Things that you go through your daily life and maybe get tripped up on, and not because you just don't care, but because never lo ala al da'atcha, that you never even occurred to you that this was an issue or a problem. Okay, so let's take a look. Parak Yud Aleph, Pirtei Midat HaNikiyut. Pirtei Midat HaNikiyut Rabim Hem Me'od. There are many, many divisions, parts of the puzzle when it comes to Nikiyut. Why? Vinam kechol hapratim shebechol hashin samach he shesa mitzvot lo ta'aseh. Think of all the different permutations and all the different details having to do with all the 365 mitzvot lo ta'aseh. Just that alone, right? If there's a mitzvah of lo tachmod, lo tigzol, okay, they sound familiar maybe because we just read them last week. There's a mitzvah lishmor et Shabbat. There's a mitzvah to put a mezuzah up. Well, there's a mitzvot taseh. The mitzvot lo ta'aseh, we'll say. Those have many, many, many pratim or details. The general concept of what this midah is, I've already told you. That you are clean from all the possible permutations and subdivisions and details of this mitzvah, of this isur. Even though the Yetzer Hara tries to cause a person to sin with every possible sin, there are those things that we have more of a feeling towards, we're drawn towards them more. And it's those specific areas where the Yetzer Hara allows us, enables us to justify things to ourselves that we're doing and to give ourselves a heter to do something. Therefore, in those areas, a person needs needs chizuk in order to win over his Yetzer Hara, and to be pure or clean from chet. I would imagine nobody sitting here right now listening to me needs chizuk on don't cook meat and milk together. I mean, you might by accident, it might trade something up. That happens. But I don't think someone needs to tell you to really, I mean, you start your day and you go in your kitchen or you go out shopping, make sure, don't forget, don't eat meat and milk together. Don't cook them together. Don't eat them together. Don't sell. Most people don't need that chizuk. But there are areas where we all need chizuk. And so too, the Chachamim told us in Gemara and Chagiga, gezel v'arayot, when it comes to theft and immorality, nafsho shel adam mechamadatan umitava lahen. That a person's soul desires them, wants them. Now, what's this business about gezel? Again, he's coming back. He mentioned this in the last chapter briefly. I told you he's going to talk about it in depth, not now, which we're going to get to it. But there's a big difference between this idea of gezel and the area of arayot. But the difference is actually minimal. We'll see why. Look, like I said, tachlis, most people are not a ganav. Most people would not come into your house, take something, put it in their pocket, or pickpocket you in the street. Nevertheless, rubam to'amim ta'am geneva. Most people taste the taste of theft, b'masa'am umatanam, in their business dealings, by giving themselves all kinds of heterim in order to profit. Each person because of the loss from his friend, and they'll say leharviach shani. Business is different. Oh boy. Okay, this one I can spend a long time on. I'm only going to spend a couple minutes. It comes with not a story, a statement that I've made. I've mentioned over the years, and I may have mentioned it already once in the Mesilat Yesharim class. I'm sure many of you know Rabbi Herschel Schachter Shlita, Rosh Hashiva of YU. I met him a couple times. Brilliant genius. I never met him. I never heard him speak. And one time I was at a rabbinic conference years ago, and I went into his class. He was going to give a class, and I'll tell you what the class was in a minute, because that's the whole point of the story. And I decided I'll take out my pencil and my paper and take notes. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the way he speaks and teaches, when he gives a shiur, it's like trying to catch bullets when you try to take notes. In the notes, I actually kept it for a few years for posterity, then I tossed it. In the notes I wrote, forget it, meaning there was just no way I could keep up. It's impossible. His brain is on whatever, is set at a different level than most people I know. In any case, that topic, the topic of his shiur, was called Choshen Mishpat, the forgotten section of Shulchan Aruch. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, Shulchan Aruch is made up of 4 sections. Most people are familiar with one, which is Orach Chaim. Orach Chaim is where you have your daily life rules, getting up in the morning and davening and brachot and kriyat Torah and hilchot Shabbat, hilchot Eruv, Pesach, all the Chagim. That's, and if you have a Mishnah Berurah at home, that's the commentary that's by the Chafetz Chaim on the section of Shulchan Aruch known as Orach Chaim. So that's the first section. Second section is Even HaEzer, which deals with marriage, divorce, and other general areas. Third one is Yoreh Deah, which is Isser v'Heter, kosher, treif, mixes up between basar and chalav. Ma'achalei akum, when someone non-Jewish cooks food for you, what the status is of the food, what's the status of the utensils. And then the fourth section is called Choshen Mishpat. Choshen Mishpat is civil law. Using modern terms, I crashed my car into your car. I do some kind of damage to you. I loan money to you, but I charge you interest. Those are called, that section of Shulchan Aruch is called Choshen Mishpat. Why is it called the forgotten? Why did he title it the forgotten chelik of Shulchan Aruch? Now, keep in mind, I'm here 12 years. That was at least 10 years. It's over 20 years that I heard that. I don't usually remember the name of a class. I may remember what someone said, but not the name. But I thought it was a brilliant title because it's very true. We are all, everyone listening now, and anyone who may listen at a later date, all familiar with people who, unfortunately, will shuckle their brains out in davening, or she will be the one who's always making the hafrashat challah and running to do a chesed, but in their own business, not so careful. Okay, they may, I don't want to say, maybe they'll cheat in business, they won't pay their taxes, they'll make sure they undercut somebody in business, they won't make a good deal. Why? Because business is business. When you look at Shulchan Aruch as a la carte, and I'm not talking about just Hilchot Shabbat, I'll do this and I won't do that, but look at the whole picture of Shulchan Aruch. You say there's 3 chalakim you're okay with, but the fourth one, like, we'll kind of leave it aside because, hey, why you're not gonna? That's a very big problem. It's a double problem. Number one, you are 100% going to trip up. You're 100% going to fall into the area of gezel somehow or another. And the other is, it also leads to another problem, or I shouldn't say it leads to, it is another problem. What's the fundamental problem with gezel? Why is that asur? Okay, so obviously certain obvious ones, and because there's any society on earth that has some form of structure to it, we know that stealing is not okay because you can't take somebody else's stuff. I walk into, like I've used the example a million times, I walk into Mickey's Makolet and I walk out with a bag of chips and I didn't pay for it. There's not any difference between that and someone who swindles another person out of $50 million in a business deal. It's the exact same. Isur, gezel is gezel is gezel. But what's the problem with that? Why is it if I, God forbid, swindled someone out of $1 million, which isn't worth that much anymore, but I swindled someone out of $1 million and I got it now in my bank. What's the problem with that? Yes, it says lo tigzol, you can't steal, even though that refers to lo tignov, really refers to kidnapping. But we know you also, the Torah tells lo tigzol, you can't steal. But why? What's the problem? Because it's a lack of emunah. Why is it a lack of emunah? You are telling Hashem, you know, you didn't make it right for me. I'm supposed to have what that person has, and I'm going to take it no matter what. There's nothing wrong with doing a good business deal and making a lot of money. There's nothing wrong with my buying something for 20 shekel and selling it for 50 shekel. Assuming that if that's what the market bears, that's the market bears. That's called capitalism, and capitalism isn't against the Torah principle by any stretch of the imagination. What is against the stretch of the imagination is that in order to make that product for 20 shekel, I had to pay off two people and bribe them and then cause this other thing and all these other things to happen, because then I'm going to make more money. My overhead will be lower, therefore my profit margin higher, and therefore I made money. But it's saying that I am taking something that is not mine because God didn't give me the right amount. So on the one hand, when I do it the right way, it's part of the business, the way business works. And that's how it's part of Hashem's moving the money around, so to speak. And you end up with it when you're supposed to end up with it. But when you don't do it the right way and you cheat, then what happens is you are saying, I don't believe in God properly enough that I'm going to have what I'm supposed to. The Gemara tells us in Rosh Hashanah and in other places that a person's mizonot are ktsuvot. They're already fixed at the beginning of the year at Rosh Hashanah, what he's going to have in the bank account at the end of the year. Does that mean if I'm supposed to have X at the end of this year, that I can just sit home all day long and read and watch Netflix and learn? Because if I'm going to have it, I'm going to have it. No, you have to do your part still. But when you start, not you, when a person starts to cheat or starts to do something that's untoward in business, whether it's rebate, i.e. interest, and sometimes it is what's called avak rebate, which is like something similar to, it's not exactly, but it's also the same isur. You're causing yourself all kinds of problems on the stealing aspect, and it's showing a lack of emunah. I'm going to read a few more lines. Let me just see something. Yeah, let me just mention a couple of things here, because I'm going to have to end a couple minutes early. There are many. Now we know that there is more than just one isur in stealing. More than just saying you can't steal. It's obvious that it's more than just that. It's what we have here. Hold on, I lost the place. Here it is. Lo tignov velo tigzol, lo ta'ashok, lo techachashu, velo teshaku ish be'amito, al tonu ish et achiv, velo tasigvu reyacha. These are a laundry list of many things that you're not allowed to do, which referred to, you can't steal and rob. The difference between the two generally is doing it in front of the person or breaking in somewhere where no one's there. In other words, coming up to someone with a gun versus going into their house when no one is there. You also cannot, lotashok means you can't press, you can't pressure or press. For example, this is something similar to lotachmod, which is its own isur, which does not mean don't be jealous. But it is the isur of pressuring somebody, or it's similar to lotonu, which is also the idea where, I don't know if you know this, but if you go into a store, a mom and pop shop, for example, you cannot ask a price on something if you have absolutely no intention of buying. You cannot make someone think you want to buy something if you don't want to buy it. That's called hona'at dvarim. It's actually a form of verbal abuse, believe it or not. Now, because each one of these deserves a little bit of the definition, I'm going to stop here because I need to head out. But I'm going to pick up next week, Bezrat Hashem, next Tuesday. I'm going to talk about these. That again, these are things that in general sound like, okay, I don't rob, I don't steal, I don't pressure, but how we have to see the details in each one of these. And this is just one area. So Bezrat Hashem will pick it up next week on Tuesday. Okay, have a wonderful day, everybody. And good luck with the storm. Bezrat Hashem.
Thank you.